Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Go Global Ed podcast, brought to you by the International and Foreign Language Education Team, also known as IFLE, and the Office of Post-Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. My name is Cory Neal, and I'm the Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad Program Manager. The Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad, or GPA, program provides grants to support overseas projects in training, research, and curriculum development in modern foreign languages and area studies for teachers, students, and faculty engaged in a common endeavor. Today, I'm speaking with Karnisha, Hormeku, and Damaris Dunn. Ms. Hormeku is an English teacher and guidance counselor at a Department of Education school in Brooklyn, New York. Damaris Dunn is a PhD candidate in the Department of Educational Theory and Practice at the University of Georgia's Mary Frances Early College of Education. She is a former New York City public school teacher and youth developer. This past summer, Karnisha and Damaris participated in a Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad short-term seminar to Ghana. The Fulbright-Hays Group Project Abroad was awarded to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, was led by Dr. Jamila Lyiscott, Dr. Keisha Green, Dr. Susan Wilcox, and Dr. Esther Ohito, and was entitled Teachers Becoming Learners of Cultural and Linguistic Diversity in Ghana. Karnisha and Damaris' experience provided opportunities to increase their understanding of Twi and Ghanaian culture. I'd like to welcome you both to the podcast.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Okay, so let's just start off by telling me a little bit, and our listeners, a little bit about yourselves, how you became interested in this specific project, and even how you heard about the GPA program. Karnisha, we'll start with you, please.
Okay, sure. So, interestingly enough, Jamila, I sent her an email to visit my class because we were doing a project around her video, Three Ways to Speak English, and she agreed to come. And then after, when we were debriefing, she told me that, she's working on this project and she thinks that I would be a good candidate for the project. So if I would love to apply, and I'm like, what is this project? Like, tell me more. And when she really started telling me a lot about the program and the intentionality of what they wanted to do, I was like, okay, I'm going to apply because I think this is something that will really help further my understanding as a teacher.
How about you, Damaris?
I want to say I was applying to doctoral programs in 2018, which seems like really long ago, considering our trip was supposed to happen in 2019. But Dr. J, who is also Jamila Lyiscott, she mentioned to me as well, similarly to Karnisha, I had reached out to her because I was interested in working with her at Amherst. And she told me about the project and that I should apply. And so I ended up not going to Amherst, but I was accepted, and I said, can I still go if I don't attend the University of Massachusetts? And she said yes. And so that is where it kind of started off for me, is making this connection with Dr. J.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of our GPA programs are not necessarily specific to the institution. So some programs, you could study at one institution and still participate in a program sponsored by another. And so I'm glad that you had that opportunity, even though that you didn't attend the institution that was awarded the GPA. Okay, so I got to hear, I heard about, or you didn't hear about, but I got more acclimated with this program through this wonderful Instagram account that Damaris put together. And I want to hear firsthand kind of a brief overview of your GPA experience. Karnisha, we'll start with you again.
Wow. To succinctly talk about Ghana in a month and the experience that I have is kind of hard, but I'll definitely try, right? I think I went with a lot of questions and left with even more questions about myself and about the work that I do. Ghana and being in Ghana with Black women or women of color was just an amazing experience for me. It was the first time that I went anywhere with that many women, and that's my first trip to the African continent. And I just really had a great time, even through the days and the times where I felt really challenged because I was missing home and family and my what was familiar to me. I think I enjoyed a new experience. a new culture, a new history, and people. I'm just so grateful for the experience because I learned a lot from people, and I know that I'm still unpacking like everything that I went through in Ghana. So it was just great to try new foods, to try new spaces and places, to meet people who are so kind and so giving and so warm and so open to listening and learning. Visiting the schools was amazing. The teachers there were really just dedicated and just open to learning from us as well as we were there to learn from them. So it's just, it was just a once in a lifetime opportunity for me to be in a space that I've heard so much about and immerse myself in a culture that, again, I've heard a lot about, but didn't really get the opportunity to do that until this trip. So it was just amazing.
Thank you. That was perfect. Damaris, how about you? How would you describe your experience?
There was so much breadth and depth to our time in Ghana. I think similar to Karnisha, that was my first time traveling with that many people. But to have gone through the experiences that we did in the time that we did, I really got to know the country in a way that I probably wouldn't have got to know it if I was not with the women that I was with. We kind of went off on our own at times to explore different places. We walked a lot together and talked. And so I think that Ghana was all the things that I thought it would be. And then, like, to Karnisha's point, I think I came away with a lot of questions. I think I realized that whiteness and colonization have touched every part of the world in a way that I just wasn't anticipating when I got to Ghana. And at the same time, the people were just so warm and so kind. And I probably said this a million times on a trip, but I kept seeing people who look like folks back here in the States that I was connected to. And I think that was one of the more powerful things about the trip, is that being someone who considers herself as Black or Afro-Latina, right? And having gone back to Ghana and seeing people who look like my family members was just the oddest thing. And so that I found home in so many different faces and people, and still in a way, like, there was a disconnect because I still don't know exactly where I come from, but I think Ghana gave me some, felt a little bit more settled in knowing that there were people there who looked like me. And it was really unsettling, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but it was interesting to come back to the state and it be so different. For a lot of the time I was like, I want to go back. So I'm definitely planning to return.
All right, that actually is a great segue into kind of a unique aspect of this program. I spoke with Dr. Lyiscott previously about doing this podcast, and she was telling me that she had selected this Adinkra symbol, this Ghanaian symbol called Sankofa, as a representation of her project. And I guess the significance of Sankofa is that the symbol loosely translates to go back and get it or go back and fetch it. Could you explain how that idea of going back and fetching it played into your experience in the program? Karnisha, we'll start with you again. Sure.
Okay, sure. Going back and fetching it, right? I think for me and how it played out in my experience in this program is that with anything that we do in this life, I believe we must kind of start from the very beginning. And Ghana is at the epicenter of so much history, so much richness, that it was really important for me and for us to go back and to really think about what has history taught us and what is history still teaching us as we are here in a place, in a space that, some people never get to visit, but get to read about. So it was a privilege to have this opportunity to go back and learn history from the grounds that it was started, right? Like where history really started or where things really manifested and started. And so for me, my experience just going back and really fetching and really reading and really listening was a big part of me understanding just how important it is to always go back, because really when we go back, it allows us to understand the present. The present really, again, is influenced by the things and people of the past. And so it was a great opportunity for me, again, like I said, to go back and really see all this history that still exists and to think about how this still is either impacting us, whether negatively or positively. And how am I going to take this information of the past to bring it to the present in my classroom, in my spaces, in my school, to share with my kids about the importance of going back, right? We can't, like Sankofa literally won't die, because if we want to understand our present and our who we are now in history, we have to go back. And so we were constantly going back to this idea, constantly reflecting, right? I think part of going back is also part of reflecting on the past and reflecting on your previous day. So we did a lot of that on the trip. And it was really important because it just brings out a lot of newness that you might not know exists.
Yeah, it's very interesting, kind of the concept of going back to move forward. And again, such a unique approach to this project. I absolutely love this. How did this play into your experience, Damaris?
I think that, I have read so much about Ghana, formerly enslaved folks. And for me, there was nothing that I could read that could prepare me for that experience, to go back to the dungeons where my ancestors could have possibly, like traveled across the water to come to the US, right? That was one of the most like powerful things that I could think about in terms of going back. And then to be able to walk through the doors of return, right? To be able to return to Ghana, I think was just a really powerful moment for a lot of us. And so when I think about going back and getting it, I think about kind of going to Ghana unchained in the same way that our ancestors were, right? They didn't start off as enslaved people. And I think all too often folks in the United States are displaced from the idea that they were more than like, they were always like enslaved, right? And the people there weren't prior to. So I think that for me, Ghana, like returning and being able to return on my own accord with a group of Black women was in a way like a site of resistance. And in a way, it just reminded me of just how powerful the people are that I come from. And so I think that was like the part of the trip, particularly the dungeons, that helped me to really think about this concept of going back to fetch something, of going back to talk to the ancestors, and to really make a covenant with them about what I plan to do when I came back home.
So yeah, I want to keep talking about these symbols because again, it's such a unique approach to a GPA program. Dr. Lyiscott told me that each participant selected an Adinkra symbol prior to the trip that meant something personal. I was hoping that each of you would share the symbol that you chose, its meaning, and her and I also kind of talked about how she wanted her participants to use that symbol as a means to reflect on who they were, who they are, and who they are preparing to be. So I was hoping that you could share your symbols and thoughts. Karnisha?
Sure. So oddly enough, maybe in 2016, I don't even remember, but I got a tattoo, and it was an Adinkra symbol, which is a coma. And when people look at it, and really it's a literal heart, right? And the Ghanaian or the Adinkra symbol, the meaning is about patience, endurance, and understanding, and just tolerance. So I got that years ago. And so when we had to pick a symbol, I was like, oh, yes, like I already know what it is because I wear this on my body every single day, because I truly believe, as I was gearing up for this trip and I was thinking about being in spaces with people who I am not too familiar with, right? This is kind of, to me, some people wear like a cross on their body or a chain or something to represent their faith and something that can help them. And this was mine, right? This was my reminder to go into this space with a lot of patience, because 30 days, this was 30 days with people that, I got to know on Zoom and some people I've met before, but it will require a lot of patience to really navigate the spaces that I am going to be in. also being understanding of myself and others, right? There are things that I do that others don't do. So as I thought out my symbol, and I was so happy that we got to choose this because it really does represent part of me, right? Like my friends would say, like, yeah, she's the patient one, or she's the understanding one. And I think it really manifested in good and bad ways on this trip because, again, it was just a lot to navigate the space with all these different women and all these different personalities, and also the space of Ghana, which is new to me as well. So I really held on to that. And whenever I felt myself either breaking down because I'm tired, or breaking down because I miss home, or breaking down because I'm overwhelmed with just all the information that I'm learning and I'm gaining, I went back to my symbol and I just kind of found my center, I would say, in what I know is planted on my body, but also something that I wholeheartedly believe in. And so this really just kind of translated and helped me through the 30 days. And I thought it was such an intentional part of this whole team that Jamila and, Susan and them put together, because it was kind of like your reminder, right? Like it wasn't your phone, it wasn't your, a cross, it wasn't anything besides this. This is your reminder, also your commitment, right, to this space, this time, this energy, this country. So I really, really appreciated having that be a part of this program and part of me, because I've had this tattoo for a couple of years now.
It's pretty incredible you already had the tattoo prior to the trip. Yeah. It seems serendipitous. Damaris, what was your symbol?
I'm laughing at Karnisha because she really is patient. And her and I caught eyes a lot of the time in Ghana. And so it's funny. But my symbol is pronounced Naimi Nti, and it's actually the symbol of a stalk. And it's depicted as a staff of life in a number of cultures, but in Akan, it's like the basis of like survival and nourishment. And so it's like it looks like a tree, but it has like all these branches and it's kind of upward, and it means by God's grace. And so I think when I chose that symbol, I was entering my doctoral program, and people kept telling me that in this program I would have to give myself grace and give grace mostly to myself, because it's really isolating. But then I went through my entire program with this group of women, and it was online. And so I think Naimi Nti really speaks to just like my experience, like both in Ghana and my experience leading up to the trip. It's just like, by God's grace, we were able to go on the trip. By God's grace, we were able to have the experiences that we did. And moving throughout Ghana, I would see the symbol all the time. One of the beautiful things about the Adinkra symbols is that they're all over. And so it was just this reminder, a constant reminder, right, to give others grace, and to rely on, God's grace moving through the trip, because there were some moments where we were just like, okay, all right, and so it was like, give a little grace, get a little grace. And so I really, I really relied on my symbol as well, and it really held me together. And it again, it's just a marker of like survival and moving forward, regardless of whatever is in front of you. And so I really relied on that as we moved throughout the trip.
Damaris, when you say that these symbols are all over, what do you mean? Are they like in the architecture, or what kind of ways are they?
Yeah, Ghana is one of the things that was really beautiful about going to Ghana is that everything means something. I think Ghanaians are some of the most intentional people. It's in the fabric, like the kente cloth. You could see Naimi Nti. You could see Karnisha's symbol as well. All of our symbols are kind of just like all over Ghana in different ways. And so when I say that, I mean like in the cloth, on the streets, like just kind of like drawn on the streets. So you almost saw yourself everywhere that you went, both like literally and metaphorically. And so there were just these constant reminders everywhere that this is who you are, this is what you have to lean into. But one of the things we learned about these symbols is that these symbols were ways to communicate, with like royalty and folks that were in community. And so it was really just powerful to be able to choose one. And I think later on we also connected with other symbols on our trip. When we went to the Adinkra village, we learned about other symbols and got to kind of use cloth to iron on our symbols. And so it's really powerful.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead,
Sorry.
Karnisha.
Yeah, I was just gonna say what I really learned in the village when we went to learn about the whole Adinkra symbol is just the creativity and the intentionality of Ghanaian people, right? Because on the surface level, someone might look at it and just be like, "Oh, she just got a heart. Like, what's that about?" Right? When we really think about the intentionality of a people to communicate in a way that outsiders won't know, I mean, I just think that's brilliant. And so when we hear about these stories of the manifestation of these symbols, and here we are picking something and, really committing to like, how does this tie into us? I also just was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, right? Because it also offers us a story to carry with us when we came back.
Sure.
About just what we learned and just how passionate people are, regardless of what their circumstances might be. I mean, people in the villages were just doing kente cloth, and we just looked like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, how did you do this? And it was like they were telling a story when we asked, like, oh, so what's this? What is, what's the pattern? And it was like, oh, this means this, and we're just all like, oh my God, shocked, amazing. I don't know. Let me not speak for everyone, but I know I was like, what? That was just amazing. So.
Okay, so I want to kind of go back to one of the last pieces of that last question, and kind of ask a twofold question to both of you. So you told us about the symbol and its meaning and how what that meant to you while you were in Ghana. Did that meaning evolve in any way when you came back to the United States? That's kind of part one to my question. And then part two, if there wasn't any kind of evolution of that symbol, was there, what in your experience in Ghana, what did you bring back in Karnisha and in kind of your circumstance? What did you bring back to your classroom? And Damaris, what did you bring back to your work and your study?
That's a great question. I think in a time like we have been in with COVID and just things transforming at like just a drop of a dime, I think for me, patience, understanding, goodwill, and faithfulness, which my symbol embodies, really just came and translated over here with me to the States. In my everyday life as a human, as an individual, as a woman, as a teacher, or educator, I should say, I really try to be patient. And sometimes, I am just not. Okay, like let me just be very honest. Like sometimes I am just not, because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what do you mean? I don't have a new computer or some ink, because how can I print the paper for the kids? Right. And so
Right.
sometimes I am not patient, and that's part of my humanity, right? Like that's what makes me a human. And so when I feel these moments where I'm just frustrated, I lean back on patience, because I also saw in Ghana that there are people in the schools who are doing a great job, who are there and they want to teach the kids and they're teaching the kids, but they don't have everything that they need. We visited some schools where they didn't have proper windows, or the toilets were not necessarily the best. But you know what they did? They continued to teach, right? Because there's a level of patience, and there's also a level of faith that irregardless of whatever is going on here, it doesn't stop the show. If I can take anything away from that symbol and my experience coupled together, is that don't let the small things stop the bigger things that you have planned for you and your kids that you see every single day.
And Damaris, how about you?
I think for me, as someone who is spiritual and who is on this journey of trying to get a doctoral degree by God's grace is the only way that I'm able to do it. And, I think one of the things that was so powerful about thinking about bringing, going back and fetching it is that I still am trying to understand how our ancestors made it. Like, I am still in awe of the fact that I am here. I think, and so it's only by God's grace that I could be here, that I could be here to do the work that I'm doing, that I could lift up the work that folks like Karnisha and some of the women that we went on a trip with, like the work that they're doing in their classrooms. Like, I feel like it's my responsibility, or that was the seed planted in me, to make sure that I lift up the labor that Black women have and continue to do. And so I think that what the trip reminds me of, and the way that I kind of carry that, the symbol of Naimi Inti with me, is that it's only by God's grace that we're here, or whoever you kind of believe in, right? It's like it's by some other powerful thing that is bigger than us that we are here, especially for Afro-diasporic people, because I just, what we experience, or the feelings that you feel when you stand in a dungeon, um the way that your skin kind of like tightens up, or or you feel like an emotion that is like deeply human. And there were so many emotions that we felt when we were there, by God's grace and us being here. Like, we are here still, and I am absolutely in awe of that. And it has to be something bigger than me, has to be something bigger than us, that keep us here, that allow us to be in conversation, that allow us to do the work that we do in and out of the classroom. Because, Cory, like, we went to those dungeons, and I was like, and again, you could read about this.
That's right. But being there elicits that emotion.
But being there
and making it really real.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you got to have this experience in Ghana. To me, it sounds like, again, being there is just something else that just can't be put into words. Although you're both doing wonderfully by painting this picture of your experience. So I have just one last question, really. I just wanted to know if you had any advice that you would give for GPA participants studying abroad, or just kind of any advice for folks studying abroad in general.
Well, to be honest, it was a great experience being with, I don't remember how many of us it was, but it was 15 of us. And through the highs, the lows, the medium, I think my advice really for people, thinking of studying abroad, or, going with a large group on a trip, or do research, is really spending a lot of time with self, so that you really know who you are. So what makes you tick? What do you like? What do you not like? How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with other people's personalities? Because it gets really challenging when you're studying abroad and you're not in a space that is your own.
Right.
And it requires you to have a level, in my opinion, of self-awareness about who you are, to really be able to sustain yourself through this trip.
You're making such a great point, and it's something that we actually, I try to kind of preach to my project directors, is allowing these GPA participants time for self-reflection, to soak in the experience, to have time with themselves throughout the entirety of these programs. So I think this is fantastic advice. How about you, Damaris?
So there are two things. I think when you meet with folks online, even for, like, we met with each other for a really long time online. And even in that time, meeting each other in person was so different.
Sure.
It was so drastically different. And so I think I err on the side of don't have so many expectations for what your trip is going to be or how people are going to be. I really think that you have to enter any group space with a certain level of grace and a certain level of awareness, again, to Karnisha's point of like who you are, but then also like what you hope to contribute to the space, right? And really the importance of stepping up and stepping back. I think those are things that really resonate with me as I reflect on our trip. And I've talked about this trip with anybody who would listen to me. And so I think points of reflection individually are good, but I also think group reflection is really important. It just takes a certain level of patience to be able to facilitate those discussions. And I think those things have to be ongoing. I've traveled with young people before and debrief with them every day. And it just made the next day lighter because they were able to go to sleep lighter, right? And so I think there's a level of group reflection that should be happening. There is a level of individual reflection that should be happening. And I think just recognizing that we're just all at different places in our lives.
Well, I can speak for all of IFLE when I say that we're very proud to have sponsored such an enriching and interesting and unique program. I really want to give kudos to your impressive project director, Dr. Jamila Lyiscott. And I've just been absolutely impressed by the two of you, and I'm just so happy that you sat down with me today. I mentioned earlier, Damaris, your Instagram. Would you plug that wonderful Instagram page that you have?
Yeah, so it wasn't just me. I just want to be clear. It wasn't just me. Pamela Segura and Jessica are two other women that were on a trip with me or with us. And like they also like helped. But I am the real lady. I like putting together reels and stuff like that to capture our trip. And so our Instagram is at AfroGirls2022, and it's called Afro Girls Remembering. And so it has our kind of day-to-day experiences in Ghana, short paragraphs about what we did, questions that we had, and it captures some of the participants on the trip.
Yeah, and it's such a vibrant page, and it's got tons of information, tons of videos, tons of photos. I mean, it is really, really, really well done. I also wanted to plug University of Massachusetts Amherst Center of Racial Justice and Youth Engaged Research, of which your project director, Jamila Lyiscott, is a founding co-director. Karnisha, Damaris, I truly, truly can't thank you enough for sharing your incredible experiences and being so open about your symbols and the personal connections that you have to them.
Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
And again, really just shout out to our team directors. They were all amazing. And this experience and everyone on it was once in a lifetime. So thank you for the opportunity. And this is amazing.
Yes.
Well, you can't see me right now, but I've got a huge smile on my face. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another Go Global Ed podcast.